All right, we are live. Tom, thanks for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, yeah, just for a bit of background, I think you sort of reached out to me on Instagram because you had decided to form a community here in Bali, the Gentleman's Table.
That's the one.
Yeah, I've been to one, really enjoyed it. I guess a good place to start would be, what is the Gentleman's Table and why did you start it?
Yeah, so Gentleman's Table basically started as a concept. I had the idea in Scotland. I was going to call it the Braveheart Social Club. Braveheart, as we know, is a popular film up in Scotland. You need to be brave, you need to have a heart, something that men sometimes struggle with, especially the latter. And just wanted to build sort of a social club around men. I found often when moving around the UK, there were lots of sort of clubs and events for women, which is absolutely fantastic. But for men, unless you're going, do you want to grab a pint? Anything else apart from that is seen as a bit weird, which is fucked up, you know? But I actually ended up moving from Edinburgh down to London due to work purposes, so never got the chance to actually throw myself into this. And then the last 2 months I've been in Bali. I was volunteering in a hostel, coming to the end of my stay at the hostel. Shout out to Speeder. But ultimately was thinking, I've met a lot of people, but how many of these people are actually still here? Because they'd stay for 3 or 4 days at the hostel, then they'd move on. So I thought with all these things, rather than grumble about it, I'd do something and actually make something happen. And yeah, Bali, Canggu is the perfect place for it. You've got a lot of people from all around the world. A lot of people have moved here by themselves because you can't just work at a bar or a restaurant. A lot of people have set up their own businesses. So ultimately there's a massive market for people who are by themselves, want to connect with like-minded people, want to socialise, and giving them something on sort of a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis to bring them together where they don't have to think, they can just turn up. And the main reason they're there is to socialise with something, I just wanted to bring into fruition. So yeah, here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's funny you mentioned that because clearly the demand is there.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, the first one I went to, there were 30 people?
Yeah, around that.
And just so many people in the group as well,
Yeah.
obviously looking to connect. And I think everyone who goes to these type of events, they're all on the same sort of wavelength, you know? I think everyone's there to try and get to meet people, have a good time, get to discuss all these different things. I wonder then, because, yeah, I think you were saying you were a bit frustrated back in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Because there weren't really too many of these things. Why do you think it's so difficult for men to, reach out to people, and why is it so difficult to form these type of social groups?
It's a really good question and something I still don't know the answer to. I think as men, we tend to be pretty social. Massive generalizations here, but guys tend to have bigger social groups. Guys tend to play maybe more team sports than women, yet we still struggle to form these sort of close friendships. I think ultimately people get settled, you know. They either hang out with their friends from home, they hang out with their friends from university, and they maybe hang out with work colleagues. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you've known someone from the age of 4, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be, or should necessarily be, best friends with them for the rest of your life, you know? When you're 4, you're going to have very different interests to what you're going to have when you're 30.
Do you think that's where some of the conflict lies, is because you're changing and growing, because we all change and grow sometimes at different rates.
Yeah.
So the conflict comes when you're changing and your mindset changes, but then you're hanging around the same people who haven't quite caught up to you yet.
Yeah, and there's no sort of right or wrong way to live life, and that's something that I'm trying to tell myself. It's like the people that go out versus the people that don't go out. The people that go out think that the people that don't go out are boring. The people that don't go out think that the people that do go out are wasting their time, wasting their money, not being productive, whilst actually it's just like someone speaking English and someone speaking Spanish. It's just different languages, you know? It's how different people want to live their life at different times, and it's respecting that and ultimately not judging people for it.
Well, 100%. It's. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's like, you know, if you were to meet a Chinese man and he only speaks Chinese
Yeah,
and you only speak English, and you're trying to have a conversation and nothing's happening,
yeah,
he's not a stupid man. He's not a stupid man. He's just. I was going to say he's just a Chinese man. That's, yeah. But point being, yeah, none of you are stupid.
yeah,
Uh, and yeah, it's just speaking different languages. And when you apply that to life, I think that's definitely helped me and my perception of it all. It's like my frustration was, okay, why are people doing this? And maybe I should be doing that. But there is no right answer.
yeah,
And also, I think there's a danger of you putting yourself in one of those groups as well. Because I think it's the same politically as well. It's like when you constrain yourself to sort of one group or one way of thinking, that means you're not going to adapt, you're not going to change, and you're not very fluid. Whereas if we look at it in the social life, you might have some introverted tendencies, you might have some extroverted, you might want to let loose a little bit, you
yeah.
might want to have a 3-day bender once in a while, but then apart from that, you don't drink.
I would never.
Yeah, but I think that's the idea, right? It's like everyone's got different things or way about doing things, and that's why I think, yeah, don't put yourself in a box, don't let that become your identity, just, you know, go with the flow. And I think also just don't be resistant to change as well, because we can all change, right? But did you find back in the UK, did you find, like you said, people were different from you, and that's cool, but was that frustrating for a while?
Yeah, like I've got some amazing friends from university, and I think I spent a period of time trying to sort of change my friends to be what I wanted them to be. So I'm one of these people that will try anything, okay? That has its positives and its negatives. But if you say comedy, if you say theatre, if you say art gallery, will I enjoy them all? Absolutely not. But I'm quite up for just going and trying new things. While some people, again, nothing wrong with it, but quite set in their ways. They know that they like going to watch the football. They know that they like going to the pub. So they will do that. And spare time, leisure time is valuable, right? So why would you risk going to a gig to see someone that you don't know, that you might not like, and you've wasted money, you've wasted time? I get it. So what I've tried to teach myself is accepting people for who they are and loving them for who they are, okay? So you're going to have certain friends or certain relationships which have certain purposes. And it's not that you're using your friends or putting them into boxes, but there might be someone, if someone says, I've got a +1 for a party, you know that you might not bring along the super introverted friend that doesn't like big groups, because they're not going to enjoy it. Whilst if there's something which is a more low-key, one-to-one basis, then you might have an absolutely amazing time with them. It just depends on the environment. But it's trying to almost have friends for different purposes and accepting them for who they are, rather than trying to have your friends to meet your needs, because that doesn't meet their needs. It doesn't meet your needs. No one's happy. It can cause conflict and ultimately lead to the frustration that you spoke about.
Big time. And I think that was my biggest issue, was I find people who I loved going on a night out with.
Yeah.
And if I went on a night out now, I'd love to get them involved. But my issue was, creating that frustration, being like, right, why won't this person have these types of conversations with me? Why won't I connect with them on a deeper level? But it's just like, that's just who they are. You can't change that, right? And I think that's just so important. I mean, you mentioned that you like trying like lots of different things, and you said that can be positive but also negative. What did you mean by negative in that instance?
I suppose in the instance that so for example, in lockdown, I was playing my parents' piano at home, absolutely loving it, thought it was Mozart, off we go. And so I bought a keyboard, cost me £500. Then I moved down to Bristol, brought the keyboard with me, and shock, it gathers dust. Didn't play it, felt like a chore. So it's great to have new hobbies, try new things, but sometimes I wish that I was better at actually sticking with something rather than just going, what's next? But that's maybe a lesson for life as well, right?
That's interesting, yeah, because I always think, because a lot of people, I think they're not quite sure what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And I always thought, like, so if you're trying lots of different things, you know, one might stick and one might not, but I think just going out trying new things is so important.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting way of looking at things. Do you think some stuff maybe you've dropped it too early, maybe, or?
I think, yeah, maybe dropped it too early, but I was just thinking back to just a slight pivot. But I look at my parents, and they live in a village. I was joking that they live under a rock, but they live in a village in the arse end of nowhere. And for years, I sort of compared myself to them in terms of I'm going out, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm moving to new places, I'm traveling the world, while they're just in this village. You know, they do stuff. Promise, mum and dad. But ultimately, they're content, they're happy. And that's ultimately what we're all looking for. Of course, you can have emotions of up and down, you can have moments of euphoria, moments of sadness, but what we all want is just to be content and happy. And it comes back to that is, yes, I might be out there doing all this stuff, but they're just happy and they're content with their routine. And it's similar to people back home. Okay, Bali isn't for everyone, traveling the world isn't for everyone. Some people are just very, very happy doing what they're doing. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's very easy, back to the point about them v us with the drinking, is that because we're out here, we're doing this, we've seen the light. The light isn't for everyone, and it's not always light, it can be darkness.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And yeah, totally agree with all of that. I think there was one point you mentioned there as well, it's just they're just happy with that routine and they're content. I think there's a real beauty in that.
Of course.
And I remember a lot of people were sort of challenging me on sort of my lifestyle as well. They're like, hang on, you do jiu-jitsu 6 times a week, gym 3 times a week. Like, mate, you need to go to the pub, you need to have a pint. So it can work both ways. And then I sort of questioned that. I'm like, because there was a period where I was, and this is the problem, right? When you hang out with people who aren't on the same path as you, they can get inside your brain and then you can start doubting yourself. But I was like, maybe I am sort of, you know, I do need to take my foot off the gas a bit. Maybe I am doing too much. And then I was like, actually, no, because I get joy out of this stuff.
You're enjoying yourself.
Whereas a lot of other people, I think, would see that and be like, oh, fuck that. Like 6 days, mate, have a day off, mate. Like,
I mean, it's small things like today, like woke up 6 o'clock, went to the run club. And me, maybe 5 years ago, would have been like, why the fuck would you do that? That's awful. But when you want to do something, it doesn't feel like a chore. I'm not saying waking up at 5:30 is necessarily the nicest thing in the world, but you get into a routine, you look forward to it, you hold yourself accountable. I know that if I don't go, I'll then beat myself up for the rest of the day. I go, I enjoy it, I start the day off well, but one person's chore is another person's joy.
But I think that's also something that can be created over time, like you said. It's not something you've always, Tom, you've always liked running. Like,
I've dreamed of waking up at 5:30 for the whole of my life.
It's something you've ingrained into, right?
Yeah.
Because you know that running is going to make you feel good.
Yeah.
In this instance, a running club, it gets you socialising a bit.
Yeah,
like you see all the benefits.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people, I think, just focus on, it has to be done. I think just changing that mindset of being like, this is something I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's that long-term picture, but if you're just doing things just because you might feel better in the future, then I feel like the value's sort of lost there. But if you're doing it because you love the instant benefits, because we all want to feel pleasure instantly, right?
Of course.
And I get this whole long-term gratification thing, but at the same time, I feel like you've got to find joy in the process.
Enjoy the journey, not just the destination. If we're going to chuck the cliche phrase out there.
It's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, right? Yeah. Big time. I think you also touched on something very interesting there. You were discussing how, there's these ups and downs of life.
Yeah.
And I remember throughout uni, that was a lot of my life. It was like the downs were pretty intense, but then the ups were pretty intense.
Yeah.
And, it's like if you go out, take some MDMA or something like that, you experience the highs.
Yeah.
And then eventually, you'll get that drop, right? And I think when you're young and you're going through that, like, I think eventually you may or may not grow out of it, but you start seeing it for what it is, right? You become aware of it. And I think there's a beauty in life of just being still and calm when you haven't got those ups and downs. And that's what I've really learned to enjoy out of life. It's not those chasing that mega dopamine rushes or those really big highs. And yeah, naturally, it's sort of I'll get those out of sport and other stuff, right? And you'll still get lows, but I think the beauty is actually finding that middle ground where you're just balanced.
The equilibrium,
Yeah, and I remember, I think that's been where I've been most content, is when there's just like not too much surprises, not too many of them, just I think a lot more steady. I feel like that's where the beauty lies, whereas those highs and lows, I feel like that's where, it sort of plays with your mood a bit.
I think it's the same, like, I don't have a job at the moment, an official job with official income coming in, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, you know? And okay, I've still got savings. It's not like I'm living off nothing, but I'm probably living off £1,000 a month, you know? And yes, it's barley, so things are cheaper, but it's the same with the highs and lows of wealth, you know? I've not experienced being super wealthy, but that's not necessarily what's important to me, you know? It's about being content. It's about having good people around me. And I've really realised that for me out here, the most important thing in my life is connections. And you can't buy them.
And is that something that you've figured out here now that you've got that? Because I feel like connection is something which we neglect back in the UK, I find, or at least in my case, right? It's like when everyone's just in the system, if you like, and everyone's going to work, and I do feel like there is a lot of noise out there, and you get distracted by all these wants and desires. But the reality is, it's just like when you're stressed, like, okay, it's easy to say, right, it's because I haven't got this promotion or because I've got these bills to pay. But actually, it's like, that's all just noise. And I feel like when you get deeper, it's like, right, what's not going right, but that is actually important. What needs are not met. And it's like, I think connections is a big one.
Huge.
How many people perhaps, think it's one of these things, but then actually they think, oh shit, actually, I don't really have a best mate, or I don't have someone I can vent to, or I feel like when I'm in a room with my friends, I feel like I'm not even there, or I'm not noticed. I wonder how many people feel like that.
There must be so many people who are in similar situations, like you just said there, but they have no idea how to get out of that situation or change that situation. Because, okay, you think, how do you make new friends, right? As an adult, sport. What happens if you don't like sport? Okay, maybe you can go to a book club, but there's a lot of emphasis, and that's back to the gentleman's table. That's why I wanted to set something up where the main thing is socialising, because you know that everyone there wants to socialise to a certain extent. While someone may go to the book club, they're not there to socialise. They're there to talk about books, but they may have already got their friendship group or their friends, or they don't want new friends. And then you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself because you're going to this book club thinking, I'm here to make friends.
Right.
And then when people aren't necessarily there to do that, and that's the one thing that you're doing to try and get yourself out of the fact that you've got friends that you don't really feel like you resonate with. But back to being here, like, I meet multiple people every day that are new. Back home, very limited. And that's being in London. If you're in a village in the arse end of nowhere, But this is me, you know. Everyone has different needs, different wants, different desires. For me, connection is really, really important. For other people, maybe they've got 2 or 3 close friends. They're in a relationship. They've got a dog. And actually, why would they want to meet new people all the time?
But then again, I feel like connection's always going to be there in some form, right? Whether it's like, if your thing is, I love making great connections with all these different people and just discovering new things about people. But then even that person with 2 or 3 best mates, that's still a connection.
Of course, right? They've still got it.
They still have got someone. I was always of the belief, like, you only really need like 2 or 3 super best mates who know everything about you. And then, but I guess the beauty out here is that you do meet lots of people on the same path as you and with the same sort of mindset. Uh,
How do you find, back to the like favourite topic we always talk about, like social media, how do you think that's impacting sort of connections, relationships? Because I went for a coffee with a guy called Simon yesterday who's doing some really cool writing stuff. And he was saying written communication is huge. We do it all the time. But how often are the things that you actually write down and share with other people, how often do they actually have much importance or much significance? You know, it's very much top line. Hey, how you doing? Good, thanks. Yeah, you good? What you been up to? Been up to this. There's not much depth to it. Nowhere. You would never have this conversation, or I would never. Shouldn't make generalizations. I would never have a conversation like this over WhatsApp.
It's funny, yeah, because I've been really. I remember because someone called me out on it. Because I remember I used to have a mindset coach who my boss brought in at my old job.
Oh, cool.
Christian Hoyle, really cool guy. And I remember after I left my job, I actually wanted to call him for advice because he's so knowledgeable. You know, he's done so much. And I was like, yeah, okay. He's like, yeah, sure. Can call you at this time. So I pick up the phone. He's like, hey, Christian, how's it going? He's like, I'm good, Harrison. How are you? I was like, yeah, good. He's like, well, that's a lie, isn't it? Because if you were good, you wouldn't be calling me. And I was like, oh, yeah, and that's kind of a fair point. I mean, yeah, and then I tried covering it up by saying, well, you know, yeah, I'm going through this sort of rocky period, but in the grand scheme of things, I am content, right?
Yeah.
But I was still, the reality was in that right, yeah, exactly. And now I've really tried to uncover stuff. Like I've got another friend called Yaz who, again, I think because she works a lot with people and does a lot of couple therapy and that type of stuff and one-to-ones with people, I think there's always this perception that, yeah, she's doing amazing, right? And then I actually said to her the other day, like, how are you? Because I feel like you're just this, like, constantly happy, positive woman, and she is. But then it happened to be that moment she'd gone through a difficult period, Bali, I think motorcycle accident, that type of thing. She was, oh, thank you so much for asking, because I feel like a lot of people just presume I'm okay.
Yeah.
So now I'll really make an effort to answer honestly. So if people ask me, how are you, Harrison? I won't just say good. Don't get me wrong, like if it's someone at a restaurant,
mate, you're right.
well, if it's like a waitress and there's like, how are you? I was like, oh, I'm so happy you asked, and then I go on like a 5-minute rant.
Funny you should say that. Yeah.
Yeah, but generally speaking now, if someone says to me, like someone at the co-working place was like, oh, how have you been? I was like, yeah, I mean, honestly, last week or two I've been quite ill. I had this infection and then I had this going on, and I've had all these side effects, these migraines, and I'm just honest.
Yeah.
And then and then that allows me to go, yeah, I was sort of bedridden, but actually now I'm very grateful because I'm not bedridden anymore.
Yeah.
I can walk about. Yeah, I've got a bit of a chest infection, or whatever it is. But yeah, and I think just answering that honestly.
How do you feel like that goes down with strangers? Do you think people are like, fuck, he's off? I just asked this guy how he was. I was being polite, and now he's telling me that he's going through an awful breakup, and we've been speaking for 20 minutes. And
yeah, I mean, you pick and choose.
Yeah, you read the room, right?
But I'll still be honest.
Yeah.
I'll be like, yeah, I mean, been a tricky couple of weeks, mate, but yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah.
How are you? And then, if they want to, and then that way you're giving them the choice.
It opens up the conversation.
Yeah, if they want to ask, like, go into deeper, okay, why were you bad? Fine. If they don't have to ask about it.
Yeah.
And it's cool. But I think I always encourage this authenticity in everything.
Of course.
If you're not good, don't fucking say you're good.
Yeah.
I just think that helps.
But it also makes it a lot worse for everyone else, because if you're not good and you say you're good, maybe that other person isn't good either, and you've said, how are you good? And then they feel like they need to say they're good as well to be socially acceptable.
That's an interesting point.
Agreeing. When actually, if you'd said, oh, I'm not too great, had a rough couple of weeks, and they go, fuck yeah, same as me actually, then you've got common ground, rather than this perception, back to social media again, everyone is having the best time, everyone is happy, everyone has lots of friends, everyone is winning, everyone is rich, and I mean, we know this, but people don't post when they're not having a good time. People don't post when they're not going on holiday. So it's just this constant feeling that everyone is always good, which is great if it was true.
And yeah, well, actually, and it's like your own point as well. It's like even if the other person is in a good headspace, it's like there's an energy exchange all the time, right?
Yeah.
So if someone's just got positive energy to put onto you, maybe if you want it, they can give you a different perspective on things,
Yeah.
or even just their positive outlook on life. If you surround yourself with positive people, then you're not even, you're just gonna, that's going to transfer.
Yeah.
And it's the same with negative people as well. If you surround yourself with negativity, I remember I went to, because I've got a habit now, I'll always hang around people who have a high vibrations,
Cool.
right, high frequency, and if I don't hang around people who drain my energy now.
Yeah.
I'm way past that shit. And I'd always encourage people to do the same. Or
How
at
would
least
you
be
say
wary.
drain your energy? What is there specific things people would do, or
Yeah,
attitudes, or
they might put you down.
yeah,
They might not really see your way of thinking. They may not be listening to you. Like you can tell if someone's listening to you
Yeah.
or not, like properly listening. But I'll give you an example. Like I was staying at a hostel the other day because I had to go to Kuala Lumpur for 3 days.
Big up.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just kind of like on the rooftop of this hostel, and I was working for a bit, but then got dragged into one conversation, which was fine. Got talking about something which was interesting, and then gradually, you know how it is at a hostel, people pull up chairs. And
Yeah.
they ended up being this little circle, and I remember there was this crowd of people and they would like really drain my energy, and I wasn't even there long, but yeah, they were just different wavelength, I feel. And you could just tell, like this one woman, right, I'm sure she means well, but you could just tell she would ask a question to someone, they would answer, and then she'd interrupt them. It's like, why are you asking a question if you're not going to listen to them? And that's the sort of thing I think about. And I was very sensitive towards it because I'm sort of out of that headspace and that bubble. But
Yeah, you're not used to the hostel world, I suppose, which is
well, it's been a while since I was staying in hostels.
Yeah.
But it was just like I used to have that mind. I wouldn't notice it as much when people interrupt you and not listening. But I think once you do some work on yourself and you start having boundaries with who you're going to spend time with, you start noticing shit. And I was so sensitive to that because I was like, I just wasn't used to it. Whereas I would always sort of ask people, like, start questioning now, because a lot of people, I think, are still in that same environment they were a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And they're advancing and they're doing as best as they can. But then these other people still have these same belief systems about you and them, and they've got their fixed ideas about you, right? So I think just sort of challenging what you see and what you tolerate.
Yeah. Always
So
who you surround yourself with.
it's massive. It's massive, and I think that was just one example, right? I think people can drain your energy in other ways.
Yeah.
If someone calls you and you think you want to be picking up the phone and thinking, oh yeah, you don't want to be
I'd
thinking,
love to have a chat. Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to think, it's like that Eddie Hearn meme.
Yeah.
It's like, oh fuck off, it's like you don't want to.
Them again.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there'll be a purpose for it sometimes, but that's a big one. You've got to like look forward to speaking with them, and yeah, again, if someone's like constantly interrupting you, this, like if we were just constantly interrupting each other now, like, sorry, that's a fucking energy drain. Like even the listener listening now is going to be like, guys, can you just chill out?
Stop listening.
Well, yeah, they would have signed off 5 minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just so important, just being conscious of your energy levels. And again, I can give you as many examples as you want, but you feel it. Feel it. If I think listening's the biggest one. I think just are they listening to you, or
Active listening there.
yes, or is it like I'm sure, yeah, there's lovely people here in Bali, but you notice some people just want to like spout shit, and that's why I think there's a real beauty in silence or not saying anything. If I'm listening to you and you don't say anything, I think I used to think, oh, okay, he's just not interested. The reality is the opposite. The reality is you say something to me and I'm there and I'm just silent and I'm just thinking about it and I'm like processing it in my brain, and I'm not just spouting shit for the sake of it. Don't get me wrong, I do feel like sometimes people need a bit of filler words to carry a conversation. Yeah, a bit of encouragement, right? If they're not used to speaking to people, and something where it's like, oh yeah, okay, oh sure, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I do think,
Yeah.
but there is a beauty in, I think, just letting that breathe. And I think when you're confident enough to just be silent, I feel like there's a real power in that.
Yeah.
And it's something that comes over time because it's not your natural reaction to something.
Yeah, and I think it's something I'm definitely conscious of, like especially in group conversations. I get really excited. I want to talk. But then it's also realising that we've got two of these and one of these, you know? Like, it's giving people space so that everyone can join in the conversation, or trying to bring people in, rather than, I know I can talk for days, I know I can ask questions, I know I can answer questions, but not everyone wants to hear my voice 24/7, you know? So it's trying to be conscious of that within group situations, and every single group dynamic is different, you know? There'll be certain times when I'm in a group and I'm not talking that much, you know? You'll have different people, different personalities, but I suppose it's this awareness which we never really get taught. We don't get taught, and we don't really know how we ever come across.
This is a really big one.
Yeah.
Awareness, I think, is the biggest thing. And actually, I think on the self-development journey, it all begins with awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness of the self, but then also awareness of other people. And you've got to have that awareness, right? And that's where the problem is, right? If your ego is too big, I think we've all been there at some stage. And, it takes a while to, once you notice it, you're like, right, okay, I've looked introspectively, I need to take myself down a bit. It's super important. Just how do you come across? How do you think you come across versus how do you actually come across? That's a very important one, and I think that could even be an episode I touch upon in the future. Just focusing on that.
It's amazing, like when you consider what we learn when you consider what the skills that we use the most, talking is number one. But as much as we can say that, oh, it's really basic, it's common knowledge, everyone can and should be able to do it. Some people are better at it than others, right? I'm good in some ways, in other ways I'm terrible, okay? But it's not something we're ever taught at school or taught how to communicate or even, I think that's the problem with education. A lot of this stuff, a lot of it is reliant on parents.
Yes.
Parental figures to say, Tom, listen, shh, you know?
Yeah.
If you don't have those parental figures, then maybe you're not taught these things as much. But also, parents will do their best, right? The majority of parents will do their best. It's their son or daughter, and they want the best for them. But they don't necessarily always know how. They're not taught.
Well, I mean, you've got to appreciate they didn't have access to as much information as we do now, right?
Yeah.
If we want to improve anything.
Yeah, but doesn't mean we're doing it.
But we just have those resources as well. Like we can go out, how to do this, how to do that. It's all there.
Yeah.
And there's books and there's authors and an abundance of information. Excuse me. As the first cough.
How not to cough on a podcast.
Yeah, that's one. Hopefully it doesn't start spiraling out. That's a big one. I wonder how people can cultivate that, or from your experience, do you think, you said parents is a big one. How can people develop an awareness in your point of view?
It's a fantastic question, which I need to think about. Silence. What was it again? How can people...
I think just how people can cultivate that awareness or become better listeners or better speakers. I know from I
think there's basic things you can do which maybe aren't basic, but they're things that people have heard of before maybe, is try and speak. If you're finding speaking quite difficult or challenging, or you're introverted or nervous, or you don't like new situations, when you're at the supermarket, don't go to the self-service. Go to the checkout. Ask them how their day is. And just get yourself in environments and situations where you are more likely to to have to speak to strangers by putting yourself out there.
Okay.
Because it's very, very easy, as we were saying earlier, to be in your bubble and never actually have to do it. So then when you are in a situation, maybe you've had to go to a networking event, maybe you don't normally do it, but one of your colleagues is ill. And then you've got all these new people that you have to talk to, and it turns into this massive deal. Whilst maybe if you've done the talk to the checkout person a few times, I'm not saying it's an instant fix, but it may help those type of situations.
Well, networking events just a great one anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to start as well, because if you have to learn how to sell, and I know I discussed this with another podcast guest as well, same as like picking up women. If you know how to pick up women, selling yourself, if you know how to sell yourself, then I think that's a great start.
Of course.
And ultimately, you're going to find out what works, what doesn't. If you're pushing women or anyone away, I think, you know, if you thought, oh, I had a really good connection there, I wonder why they won't hang out with me. It's a bit brutal, but I think you've got to sort of do the work and think, okay, it might just be, look, different vibe, fine. But if it's a repetitive thing...
If you're the common denominator, you need to look.
I think so. I think so. And that goes for all walks of life. And I think it's so important that we all take responsibility.
Yeah.
Take responsibility for your actions. That's another big sign that you're growing as well. Another big sign that you're growing is that you're taking responsibility. You're not blaming others, right? How many people did you see, oh, right, it's because of the Tory government that I haven't got a job, or because I'm poor, or, okay, right, it's because I went on this date and, it's because of them it didn't work out, because they can see how good I was. It's like, no, you take responsibility, man. That's the first step.
I wasn't aligned with them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's also super important, right? I think just taking responsibility for everything that you do.
Yeah.
And like you said, putting yourself out there. Networking events is a big one. Solo travel to hostels, I think, is a big one, because you are effectively, in a way, sort of selling yourself to people.
You're thrown in the deep end, and ultimately, people are friendly, but having worked in a hostel for 2 months and also travelling around, if you sit at a table by yourself, maybe people come over and chat to you, but maybe they won't. And depending on who you are as a person, some people are perfectly happy sat at the table by themselves the whole day, but other people aren't. And it's having that confidence to go over and go, hey, how are you? Or hey, where are you from? And I'd say to anyone that wants to challenge themselves, go solo traveling, because you're thrown in the deep end. It's going to be difficult at the start, but there are a million things you can talk about with this person. Where they're from, where they've been traveling, where their favourite place was, how long they've been here for, what they're doing tomorrow. But it will teach you those people skills, which are hard to come by for some, or hard to perfect for everyone, but also in an environment where there's a lot of people who are in a similar situation. Rather than going up to a group in the park who are having a barbecue and going, hey guys, how's your day? And they're like, mate, I haven't got any change.
That's a big one. I feel like it is something, you can read all the self-help books in the world, but social skills, there's only one way you're going to learn.
Yeah.
And it's by giving yourself a kick up the arse and speaking to people big time. Again, that's why the sales roles is quite cool. But again, it's like, if you look at sort of dating as well, right, it's like, right, what's the number one trait that all women look for or seek? And this can be debated, but ultimately, right, if you've started it off by going and approaching them, that's just a sign of confidence there and there. And I just think, above all else, right, I'd assume most women would want to date someone who's confident, because if they're confident in themselves.
Yeah,
and if they're confident in themselves, then they're naturally going to be able to receive more trust from people, right?
Yeah.
So that's it. And I think I remember reading about how if you spend more than 3 seconds before to make a decision, then you're just going to put it off. It's like, right, if you're having trouble waking up in the morning, if you set your alarm and then give yourself time to go, oh, do I want to get up? Oh, this bed feels nice. Nah, let's just
snooze.
Yeah. But it's like, and it's the same, right? If you see a hot woman over there, and she's walking past you, right? And if you take 3 seconds to go, more than 3 seconds, you're like, no, what should I say? She's probably not my type. Well, she might be my type, but I don't know what I'm going to say. Like the weather, should I? And it's like, no.
You create a million situations in your head
Yeah.
for it to go wrong.
Yeah, and it's just like, you are your own barrier, right? Whereas if you just don't think about it, you see someone, you could say anything.
Yeah.
Say, excuse me, do you like penguins? And she's like, what? And she's
Yeah.
like, oh, don't worry about that. I don't know what I was talking about. What's your name? And then you can literally say anything. And that's
Is that your pickup line?
Well, I guess it is now. Well, I've got a girlfriend now, so, but yeah, I can't really test it out. But if anyone does,
let us know.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a big one. For me, I think I just take action. Don't think about it. Just do it. Your brain has a bias towards action. If you do something, been putting something off. I think it's all walks of life. If you've been putting something off, just do it. Don't think about the reasons why or you should or shouldn't do it.
Is there something that's helped you do that? Because that's very obvious advice, but there's a reason why people don't do that, you know? Like, we've all done it, we've all procrastinated, we've all had stuff that we know we should be doing, but we're not doing it. But why don't we do it? Is it we're scared? Is it we're lazy? It's probably a big part. Like, why are we so bad sometimes at having things which we know are important, we know are going to benefit us, yet we still do it?
I think a lot of the time it's just fear.
Or convenience.
Yeah, it's the easy. It's comfort. And comfort is the killer of dreams. I've referenced that before. Dorian Yates said that. Yeah, it's just we like to be comfortable. We like to be stuck in our ways. I had Aaron Timms on the podcast, and he discusses in his book actually, because I've read his book since the podcast, and he discusses how our body becomes addicted to certain chemicals that are released when we do something, right? So these habits become repetitive in our brain, and over time they just become the norm. So if we haven't been used to approaching a girl, then we're not going to want to do it because we're just comfortable. Same as if we're looking to change habits, there's going to be a lot of resistance there because we're not used to doing it. We just want the easy option. Do we want to get out of this relationship that's not serving us, or are we just used to the comfort that it brings when we know deep down we could be a lot more content,
more fulfilled? But it's fear of change. I suppose it's the same with career as well.
It's fear of everything, mate. It's a fear of being judged is a big one. I know a lot of people still struggle to go to the gym because they feel like they're going to be judged. And it's always the fear of the unknown, and that's what stops us, right? It's like I remember they did these experiments with kids where these kids who were, I think they were afraid of dogs, and very simple. Every time they saw dogs, they would hide behind their parents, and then all it took was for one, I think it was one little child to go and just pet the dog. Yeah. And then what happened next? All the other kids came over as well. Like, oh, this is cool. Yeah. And it's just like that fear of the unknown. And they've done this study in countless different ways. But it's just like, right, just be the first one to do that shit. Don't wait for someone else to walk that path. And I notice it all the time. Like, I'll stop off by a place to, I don't know, buy something. I bought some AirPods off the side, and naturally, I would have reservations about that, right? And I would notice, right? And at first, I thought it was a coincidence, but I've seen this a couple times when I go over to buy flip-flops or anything. I am a social evidence that this isn't a scam artist or someone like that. It's social
proof, isn't it?
It's social proof. And then I'll notice as soon as I stop somewhere, someone else will look in, and then they'll come in. And it's just, notice this in all walks of life. It's like people want social proof. It's like, for example, at school, if you wanted to go into a classroom and you're waiting to go in, if you just saw one person there standing by the door, you'd probably think, oh, okay, cool, the class is in sort of, 2 minutes, so the teacher's probably not there, so you'll wait outside. Next person comes, I see two people waiting outside the door. Okay, it's 1 minute. And then next thing you know, there's a whole line of people there, all because the first person didn't see that the teacher was already inside. And I think I go back to this a lot. It's just like, question your reality. Why are people doing this? How often are we derailed by social proof or lack of it.
It's having worked in beer for the last 8 years, it's the reason why beer companies invest so much money in glassware. Because you're in a pub, you see someone with a nice fancy glass, social proof, you then go and order that. And it's a massive, massive investment for them because they give the pints to their pubs, they get smashed, stolen, whatever, but it's all because of social proof. As you see a lot of other people drinking a pint, or your mate goes, "Oh, what do you want?" Same as you, and it just goes. You know, we saw it all the time.
Well,
if you can get a few groups on something, then everyone else in the pub will then change.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's mad, and you see these with different trends as well. And I think from a business point of view as well, it's like, how important is Google Maps and Google reviews? Like, if you see, 150 people have gone here and 4.7 stars on average, you're feeling pretty confident.
Of course.
Whereas let's say it's a Warung, for example, whereas there could be a Warung, 5 minutes closer, but it's only got 3 reviews.
Yeah.
And they could all be 5 stars, but it's like, which one are you going to go to? And I think there is a beauty, right, in doing the untrodden path. Like, what have people not tried out yet? And I think that's where I think you can make a difference in life as well. And again, just like, if you haven't seen someone else do it, maybe that's yours to go and try and experiment with. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's the same with anything, isn't it? Like, never try, never know, right? If you don't try, you don't know what's going to go down that path. Equally, there could be a big tiger down there and you're going to get eaten alive. But at the same time, you might have an absolutely amazing time rather than just going down the path that everyone else is going down, which, okay, it's nice. You know what to expect. There's no hazards, but are you going to have an amazing time? Maybe not. Or maybe that path is better suited for you.
Yeah, if you see something that you're like, oh, no one else has done this, or oh, I don't know what that is, then I think just go for it. And I think how many people have sort of taken risks in life, and I think that's just the beauty of life, really. Like, if you can take a risk, like moving to a new country, you don't know whether it's going to work or not. I'm going to Australia. I don't know if Australia's going to be great.
Yeah.
I might dislike it there, but I'd rather go and test it out for myself than think, what if?
Yeah.
I think that's just the way
I think that's how I want to live my life as well. It's, what is the worst that can happen? Of course, death. But like, realistically, you move into Australia, if you don't like it, you can always go back. And that's been my view ever since I left university. I moved around to multiple cities, and it's breaking it down. It's like, or another example would be like when people get long haul flights and they say they're nervous about flying. And I say to them, right, just break it down into achievable things, okay? So the first step is we're going to get the taxi to the airport. Then you're going to get through check-in. Then you're going to get onto the plane. And rather than this big, like, 25-hour overwhelming trip, it's, you would never normally get nervous about getting a taxi. So why are you getting nervous about getting a taxi? And back to, like, the moving to different places. When I came out here, I'm not thinking I'm moving my whole life, I'm moving to Bali forever. It's, I'm going to do a couple months there, see if I like it. If I don't like it, I'll go somewhere else.
That's a great point.
And it just makes it less daunting, less intimidating. It's not this massive life move, it's just go and see what happens.
And it's letting go of expectations, right? That's so important.
Expectations ruin everything.
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 Like everything. Like
everything.
Mate, like a date.
Yeah.
Fucking, yeah.
Food.
Like food.
So it's Google reviews, mate.
Yeah. Well, I think just if you have high expectations, you can only be let down.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like, if you just, it's not like going around expecting everything to be shit, but I think that's just the beauty in that. Just like, we don't have any expectations. Just be like, okay, we're going to give this a go. I don't know if it'll be any good, or I don't know if this sport is going to be the thing that changes my life, or this business venture. So what? Like, just let it go.
That's something I've been working massively, expectations with people. I found it in the hostel quite a lot. I'd go over there with energy. Hey, how are you? How's your day going? Yada, yada, yada. Because I want people to feel welcome, I want people to have a good time. But also
Yes.
selfishly, I maybe want to talk to them, or I'm bored, or I want to have a good time. And then people don't respond in a way that I expect people to. It's fine if someone's busy, but there are ways that I would communicate that. And you then get hit with someone that's not been politely, try again, that hasn't been particularly polite, or they've been rude, or they've said something you don't agree with.
That's tricky.
And you come away from it feeling like shit. And maybe you overthink, why have they said that to me, or why have they acted the way they've acted? I've gone over there to try and be friendly. They seem really unfriendly. Do they not like how I look? Do they not like how I act? Okay, maybe they were tired, but also why have they been rude? Why are they being rude? I've just gone over there to be friendly, and you go into this stupid vortex. When actually it's appreciating, in this situation, they don't owe you anything. You've gone over to a stranger, you've gone into their space, fine, it is allowed, and you've tried to talk to them. If they want to talk, you need to be confident in yourself that you're putting positive energy out into the world, okay? If people want to take it, if people want to grasp it, amazing. If they don't, also amazing. Find someone else that does appreciate you for you and will give you the good vibrations and the good energy you want to surround yourself with. And actually, okay, maybe they've been rude, maybe it's been a bit abrupt, maybe they've been a bit blunt. But would you not rather find that out in the first 10 seconds rather than find that out after 20 minutes?
You've hit the nail on the head. I think that's so important from a mindset point of view, right? Don't take things fucking personally.
So difficult.
It is, but I do think there's a framework in which we can combat that.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've summed it up pretty well.
Yeah.
It's like just understanding, right, people in their own energies. We're not fucking perfect. Like, how many times have you or I been in a bad mood and I just don't want to speak to anyone?
Yeah.
It's not because there's anything wrong with them. And of course, like if someone's been rude, then usually, again, it's like you can't take that personally because they've had their own upbringing.
Yeah.
In my opinion, we're all just kids in adult bodies, right? I remember seeing that once and it just resonated really hard with me. So it's like now if someone's just, if someone's just annoyed me in any way or have been quite aggressive or anything like that or have just not been a vibe, I think, right, okay, I'm just a kid. I'm not going to shout at a kid.
Yeah.
I've never shouted much or been confrontational anyway. But you just don't take it personally, and it comes with time. But again, it's this rejection handling we discussed. It's like, just get used to that. That's why I think sales is really cool, because you get used to people saying no, not interested, fuck off.
I think what's quite interesting though with sales, like I've faced a lot of rejection in sales, I'm good at sales, but you face rejection, right? But I never took the rejection personally.
No.
Whilst if I go and talk to someone and they're rude, for whatever reason, that feels a lot more personal rather than they're not interested in the product or the service or my pitch. That feels professional. I can handle that rejection all day long. And you said I don't hit the nail on my head. Like, I think with these concepts, put my head above the parapet here, like, it's very, very easy to talk about this stuff, okay? To talk in theory. Have no expectations. Don't expect too much of other people. Don't assume that people think how you think. Just because you wouldn't do that to someone or you wouldn't respond to someone in that situation, it doesn't mean that they're rude. Maybe they're shy. Maybe they lack the social skills. Maybe they're just having a shit day. You don't know. But it's very easy saying all this stuff. And there's another tool, which is applying it to your personal life.
Yes. Yeah. And you've got to, again, you can read all these books and these are points that will help people, but you've got to have that awareness and be
remind yourself.
Yeah, remind yourself, question all of your thoughts. Okay, I took that personally. Why did I take that personally? And then you look deeper, right? These are all these things does, like you said, someone's rude to you, someone's done this. The reason why that's affected you, in my opinion, it's not because they've been a cunt.
Yeah.
It's because, right, this has made me feel this way. Okay, why would it make me feel this way? Okay, and then you start drawing lines to it, and it's okay, right, there is a reason why this has hurt me. It's because, okay, maybe I don't know, in my instance, when that's happened, it's like, okay, maybe there is a part of myself that I'm not as confident as I thought I was, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's just a natural human thing, is right. We're not going to be 100% content with who we are all the time,
And we all just desperately want to be liked, you know?
and understood
Yeah.
as well. And I think, yeah, when you are misunderstood, it can be hurtful. But again, I think it's just training your brain and realizing, right, okay, you attach meaning. It's like, you know, that classic, it's just such a classic phrase. It's like sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But then it's like, we learn that so young, and it's just like, you can apply that to now. It's just like, they're just words. People could say the same thing to you if someone's rude or hurtful to you, but they say the same thing in a different language. Like, I remember once I was driving my motorbike and I parked on the road, and some Indonesian man was driving a truck, and he just yelled out some random words at me. He's like, "Jabba, da, 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 da." He said all this random shit, and I was like, all right.
Cheers, mate.
All right. No, but yeah, it was like, okay, there might be a reason he said that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's had a bad experience with a foreigner, or maybe it's because I was just a shit driver. I don't think I did anything, but it's beside the point.
Yeah.
But
Blame everyone but yourself.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, point being, just if they said that same thing to you in a different language, you're not going to attach meaning to it. So why attach meaning to someone else's words?
I think it's also like the only thing you can control in life is your own emotions, your own feelings, or try to. If I slapped you now, of course, there's a range of emotions you could feel if you were still awake. But it ultimately comes down to how you choose to respond to that situation. You could be angry, you could be upset, or you could just be like, okay. And it's the same with rejection. It's the same with everything in life that happens to us. Although it's not, when terrible things happen, people respond in different ways. You know, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, if your dad dies, it's your choice of how to react. But it's ultimately we are in charge of our emotions to some extent, or our mindset to some extent, you know, and it's not always easy. Mm-hmm. But you can choose how to respond to a situation.
Yeah.
Or at least try to.
It's not easy, like you said, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And yeah, I think, again, that's why that awareness is so important. You take yourself out of it. And just to touch upon what you said as well, it's like we always wish, I wish I could change that guy's behaviour or change this person or the way they reacted. But if you think about it this way, it's like if you could control their behaviour, another human who is an equal to you, that means that they would have the power to control you.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want that, would you?
Of course.
So we have the ultimate beauty where we can control our mind. And so why would we want to control others when we can control our own mind?
It's also like when negative things happen to you or someone annoys you or whatever it is, that person's already annoyed you, that person's already been rude to you, that person's already let you down, or your expectations haven't been met, whether they're fair or not. Why are you wasting time thinking about them? They're not thinking about you. If someone's been rude to you, they're probably not thinking, oh, are they okay? That's gone. That's happened. And sitting around feeling sorry for yourself or thinking about it or hating that person just occupies your mind and wastes your time.
Yeah. It's
Don't do it.
No, don't do it. Sound advice.
Yeah.
I mean, we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Always such a joy talking.
Emotional
with you.
roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could go on going for a long time. Really, this has been really cool. I think before we wrap things up, the closing tradition is to ask the guest for a song of their choice or a song recommendation. Tom, what is your favourite song at the moment?
Favourite song at the moment is Innerbloom, if I said it right, by RUFUS the Soul. I, for a period of time, had no headphones, so sorry to everyone at Flower Boy and Rise and Run clubs, because I just play RUFUS on repeat whilst running. And timeless, doesn't seem to get old yet. And if you've not listened, get it downloaded.
I'll be listening to it. I remember RUFUS the Soul. I think I heard You Were Right years ago. and I remember like, oh, that was a great song, and then I kind of just forgot about them, and then I think it was about a year ago they just came on in someone's flat, and it was just such a great vibe. I didn't realise how huge they were now.
Yeah, so euphoric.
Yeah, really euphoric. So that's a wonderful suggestion.
Okay.
Obviously, yeah. Where can people find you if they're perhaps in Bali and they want to join the
Yeah,
Gentleman's
so
Table?
on Instagram, the Travelling Tommy. I think it's a Gentleman's Table. Might be the Gentleman's Table Bali, but you can find it all on my profile. If anyone's thinking about moving here, if anyone's moved here recently, if anyone's thinking about travelling, backpacking, if anyone's got any questions about, I suppose, anything we spoke about today. As I said, I don't have a job at the moment, so I've got more than enough time to have a chat with anyone, give people advice, or just be interested to hear people's thoughts. So
yeah, I mean,
open invitation.
I can certainly vouch that. You're a real joy to talk to. I love what you've done with Gentleman's Table,
Cool.
and I think you're very funny as well.
Oh, thanks,
very naturally very funny, very charming, and really enjoyed this. And I did notice. So because it's the Travelling Tommy, so are you sort of giving pieces of advice out there as well? Or?
Yeah, I'm flirting with the idea of whether I want to sort of go down the travel influencer path. People that have done it, fair play, because it's like a full-time job, you know. I think people, with a lot of things in life, but with this specifically, people see the end result, and a lot of people hate on it, influencers, but they don't actually realise the sort of time and the effort that goes into actually getting there. And if you get a few free meals out of it, you're never going to complain. But it's something I'm considering at the moment, how seriously I take it. It started with just me travelling around, doing a few reels, doing a few videos just because it was fun, and if it can help people. But considering whether that's a potential sort of career path or if that's just a passion project to do occasionally because it's something to do.
Okay, wicked. I'll certainly be keeping an eye out for a man. And again, this has been really good fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, mate. Really
Absolute pleasure, buddy. Absolute pleasure.
Good.